Well, hello, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Welcome to this panel focusing on actually 3 different programs today: Translation Studies, Comparative Literature, and Global Communications. My name is Lindsay Balfour. I am Senior Lecturer in Communications at the University of Glasgow, and I will be convening the new Global Communications program. I'll also be your host for this session. And I think I'll have everybody introduce themselves, maybe according to their program, perhaps starting with translation studies. So maybe I'll call on you to introduce yourself, and if you can just repeat the program you represent and what your role is within that. So maybe we'll start with Jonathan.
Hi, so I'm Jonathan Evans. I'm a reader in Translation Studies, and I'm the convener for the MSc Translation Studies.
Awesome.
Hi.
Thanks, Jonathan. Oh, sorry, Lexi, go ahead.
I'm Lexi. I'm a current postgrad student doing translation studies in my 3rd semester working on my dissertation project.
Amazing. And then we'll move on to comparative literature. Shanti.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shanti Graheli. I'm Senior Lecturer in Comparative Literature, and I convene the MLitt in Comparative Literature.
That's great. And then Luna.
Yeah, hi, I'm Luna. I am an MLitt student in comparative literature, also in my 3rd semester and focusing on my dissertation at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks all, and thanks to everybody who's joined us. I'm really thankful and excited actually to have some students here to share about their experience, and hopefully between all of us we can help to answer any questions you have about these 3 programs. We do have a team in the background here who will do their best to respond to maybe some more specific or individual questions, but as a panel, we're really happy to chat through things related to the programs, studying at Glasgow, and just generally the student experience. And so today we're actually combining a few different programs into one session, both because there's some, I think, vital information and insight about life at Glasgow in general that will be useful no matter what program you're joining, but also because there's some really interesting crossovers, I think, between Global Communications, Comparative Lit, and Translation Studies. And I can say personally, as the very new convener for Global Communications and a brand new program, I've already really come to appreciate the structure and collaboration between other programs. So I think Comparative Lit, Translation Studies have really deep ties to the field of communications. So hopefully we can kind of come together and chat about that a bit. So the format of this event is really just a conversation. We'll talk about our programs. We'll hear from our student panelists, what they have to say, but we're also here to answer your questions. So please feel free to post those in the chat, and we will answer those as we go. But maybe while we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, I thought I'd maybe ask a very simple, but I think important question of some of our current students. So Lexi and Luna, because I think it's something that people here in the session would love to hear, especially this student perspective. And the question is very simply, why Glasgow? And maybe the 2 of you could each just take a minute to share what factored into your decision to accept an offer from Glasgow and why you ultimately chose the program that you did. I'm not sure who wants to go first, whoever wants to jump in.
I can go first. So the main reason why I chose Glasgow was because I was already living in Scotland and I knew that Glasgow, the city, would be where I was going. But the more research I did into the degree that I knew I wanted to do, like in comparative lit, the more I just fell in love with the program, honestly. It was very important to me that I could do research in my sort of interests. So specifically the post-colonial course that is in the 2nd semester, obviously not promised every single 2nd semester, but at least for me, that was a really big reason why I chose the course, was so that I could focus on the post-colonial aspect of literature.
Awesome. Lexi.
I'm kind of similar to Luna. I did my undergraduate degree at Edinburgh University, so I was already in Scotland, and I wanted to kind of stay in the country, but maybe branch out a little bit. And when I did research into the program of translation studies at Glasgow, I was really keen to join just because I feel like the program has a lot of variety, Personally, my interest is in literary translation, and I really loved that there was a literary translation module specifically at Glasgow. And also Glasgow is just like a beautiful place to live. The West End is wonderful, and the university campus is just, it's a wonderful place to study. So those were kind of the main reasons for me.
Yeah, that's great. As a relative newcomer to Glasgow myself, I would second that comment. It's just a stunning city to live in and to walk around. Maybe I'll sort of move things over to the sort of course convener, program convener side, and maybe Jonathan and Shanti, if you could share a little bit about just generally what students can expect at the beginning of their program, the sort of like starting up initiation phase, and then what makes your programs unique. And if you want to share a bit from your perspective, then I can maybe talk about global comms for a minute as well. But Shanti, maybe we'll start with you in this case.
Yeah, so the very first thing that you will do as a student in comparative literature is have a one-to-one advising meeting. And we do this between August, the end of August and early September, so that as course convener, I know what brings you here, what you want to get out of your program, so that we can actually be sure to have some tailored activities that suit the specific cohort each year. The program is very much student-led and community-led. So we put a lot of our time into building the sense of community within our seminars. And something that you should definitely expect is to be asked to share your thoughts and your ideas and your interests. And I think that's really important, that from the very beginning, we want to hear about your research interests. And they don't need to be well established, but we want to get a sense that when we are doing the very theoretical work that we do on our program, it is also very much brought into practice based on what interests you specifically. So I would say this is some of the things that we would that we would expect and that you can expect at the very beginning of the course. We start with our core course, Introduction to Comparative Literature, which is very much designed to give you a little bit of a bite of everything in comparative literature, so that you can find what it is that it gives you the buzz working with literary theory and criticism. John, passing on to you.
Thanks, Shanti. It's very similar for translation studies. So you'd start off choosing the various options that you have. And obviously, like I would, if you want support in like what's best for me, what fits my timetable best, and I'm always happy to give that sort of help. We have a school-wide induction, which is for comparative literature and translation studies students, because we're all in School of Modern Languages and Cultures, where you get to meet everybody. And as Shanti says, this is kind of important for building the community across programs in our school. And then, like comparative literature, you'd start with a core course, which is translation studies in theory and practice, which again, very like comparative literature, is kind of lots of bits of different things, so that you get a sense of what the key theories are, which theories you really like, which theories you really dislike, and then thinking about how to take those forward in your later work. You'd also be doing a translation practical course if you take the MSc in Translation Studies. And those are currently language specific. And so you do translations every week, get feedback every week. And you can do an option course. And these, so you can take from across the entire College of Arts and Humanities. In Translation Studies, we have various options. So Lexi's already mentioned literary translation studies. We do subtitling for film and TV. We also have a course on marketing and translation across media.
Amazing. Sounds very, very, very robust and very instructive for me. So in terms of global communications, this is a brand new program for the University of Glasgow. And we are housed within the English and English language and linguistics department. And so we are, you know, an interdisciplinary program, but driven, I would say, by the humanities. Some of the courses that we are including on our roster, you know, similar structure, combining theory with practice. The two core courses that you would take for global communications would be sort of a theory and concepts course, and then more of a research methods course. How do we do communications as opposed to how do we sort of study and understand it? So we're really interested in questions like, you know, how are the messages that, you know, are out there in the world? How are these created? How are they sent? How are they received? How are they interpreted? What are the relations of power within those systems of messaging? How do we know what is true in a very sort of media-rich environment now? And then what do we do with all of this information? How do we live our lives? How do we act with this? So I think it's brand new, but I think for those entering the program, you have an amazing opportunity to be a part of I think, building this out together and sort of part of that foundation for the course. Similarly, you will have opportunity to take courses outside of the sort of strict global communications courses. We have options courses like post-digital intimacies, media ecologies, the history of communication, but you will have courses available to you as well, sort of outside of the global comms program. So many, many, many options. Yeah, so that's great. Thanks so much, everyone. I think we're still waiting on some questions to come in, so I'm happy to just keep chatting amongst ourselves for now. Maybe I'll go back to Lexi and Luna, because we sort of started talking about, you know, why you made the decision to join Glasgow and the start of your program. We heard about, now that you're coming to maybe the end of your program, you're entering this sort of what we like to call the dissertation stage. And maybe you could share a little bit about what that process has been like for you, choosing a topic, preparing to sort of take on a more independent study project, and share a bit about sort of what the final stages of the program might look like.
Yeah, I can start. I think at the beginning of the course, talking about the dissertation felt quite overwhelming, just because it is such a big project. But as we went through the year, because our essays are very much catered to what we're interested in as well, just for our regular coursework essays, they were a really good kind of starting point for starting to think about how the dissertation might go, because we could start exploring what actually interested us. For me, my dissertation, I'm doing the translation project, which was one of the reasons why I picked Glasgow as well, because it gives the opportunity to basically do an extended translation and then write, you know, a commentary, an essay about that. And that really appealed to me because the translation part of translation is the most interesting part for me. And there was a lot of freedom with picking my topic as well. I mean, I had to pick something that hasn't been translated into English before, but I found that actually quite interesting to kind of explore French literature and see what really piqued my interest in terms of how it connects to the theory. And at the moment, we've just had our dissertation day where we present our topics to everyone and kind of get feedback on the initial stages. And I'm now starting on the actual project, and everything's been very smooth so far. The lectures have been very helpful in any, you know, gray areas, I suppose, that need to be fleshed out a bit more, but also just like supporting our independent, I guess, vision for the project.
Right. Amazing. Sounds really fascinating. I'd love to read it when you're done.
Thank you.
And how about you, Luna?
Yeah, I'm a bit on the opposite end. I went into this degree sort of semi-knowing what I wanted to do my dissertation on, and sort of knew where I wanted to take my academic journey. And while it has changed a little bit, it's still the same. And but the good thing about the program really of comparative literature is how much they help you prepare for your dissertation. in the second semester, our core course has been almost entirely focused on our specific dissertation programs. And so every week you've had a chance to talk it through and talk to other people and get input from the cohort and from some of the lecturers. And it's been so incredibly helpful to the point where more than anything, I'm just excited to write the whole thing right now, even though I'm probably not quite there yet, but still. And so I think that's really like really wonderful from the course. I've heard from people elsewhere that like they would actually really like to have a similar type of thing where you get to just focus on your dissertation for like a whole semester. And it's wonderful, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And honestly, I think it's something that I'm sure Jonathan and Shanti can will agree with me in saying this, like writing is such a beautiful, luxurious sort of experience. And as you're sort of transitioning out of now an MSc, you know, you're becoming, you know, colleagues in a way, and it's really exciting to see. And so we share that love of writing, and we'd love to see that kind of manifesting in our students as well. Still waiting for a couple questions to come in. Don't be shy. If you do have a question, chances are somebody else has the same question and would benefit from you asking. So feel free to pop something there into the chat. I'm going to kind of continue maybe on this theme of, I guess, sort of progression or transition. So the start of the program, nearing the end of the program, and then maybe to think about the what's next question. And maybe I'll turn back to Jonathan and Shanti on this to ask a question around employability. And I know this is something that students are also always really curious about. You know, what kind of job am I going to get after this program? And so I guess my question, Shanti and Jonathan, is, you know, what can students expect maybe at the conclusion of the program? You know, what kinds of jobs, skills, careers come out of comparative literature or translation studies? And then I can speak a bit towards communications, but maybe I'll start with Jonathan on this one.
Sorry, just faffing with the mute button. As is, you know, mandatory in any online event. So we set up quite a lot of employability stuff throughout the program. So we have talks from translators, telling people like what they've done, how they kind of got into the business. We have work on kind of dealing with agencies. And our second semester core course called Approaches to Translation and the Professional Environment really kind of ramps up the thinking about, well, how do I become a professional translator? What does like the world of work look like? And thinking about how that works in a very practical sense. And obviously like doing the translations throughout the course and the optionality of the either a kind of a critical dissertation or a creative critical dissertation, the one that Lexi's doing, also gives you that gives you a chance to work on a translation that you could then take on as a sample and send to publishers and so on. So that's one of the reasons lots of students like to do that. In terms of where people go, they go all over the place. Quite a few students do go into professional translation. We've had quite a few go into subtitling and video game localization. But more than half go into kind of a wider set of careers around anything to do with communication in lots of ways, because the writing, research, critical thinking skills that you get from translation studies are really useful in a lot of jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of us can say that about any of our programs, is that this development of critical thinking is just automatically makes you more employable in the, you know, quote unquote real world. Shanti, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case with comparative literature, and this is a program that really trains you to become a critical thinker first, both in and outside of academia, and I think that's really important to bear in mind. It's a program that teaches you to think across disciplines. Interdisciplinarity is a big component of what we do and how we do things, which is why I think comparative literature is a great springboard to learning more about your own interests, but also learning how to present them orally in writing, and pitching your writing to different different outlets. And that's something that many of our alumni continue to do in their own respective areas. And our core course in semester 2 that Luna mentioned, that course is particularly designed to let you think about your dissertation project, but also learning to talk about it in different ways. For example, we have an assignment that asks you to pitch the project for a scholarship application. And that's, to me, that's very important, because learning how to write a bid will be very important in not just academia, but the public and private sector as well. Our alumni currently have roles in journalism, for example, in the heritage sector. We have careers in marketing as well as education. And every one of these tracks we try to support with extracurricular activities. You know, for example, 1 year we had a colleague from Brill coming to talk about what is it like to have a career in publishing. And comparative literature is very well positioned to make you competitive for a role like that, because you are versed in across a diversity of different areas. So yes, I think we can leave it at that for now, but any other questions are welcome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Shanti. And I would echo a lot of that again for global comms. And I think there's a lot of crossover, as I said, around this idea of sort of critical thinking. From a communications perspective, as I mentioned before, we're living in this increasingly mediatized and digitized world, and it's so important to think critically about the kind of information we're receiving and sending. And really, there is no career without communications. And I think, you know, employers in so many different sectors now are looking for strong communicators, you know, folks that can adapt to, you know, a rapidly changing sort of technological society. And I think what will happen with this program is we will emphasize a lot of sort of practice-based, or some might call it research creation activities, focused on curation, on media production. So there might be opportunity to create websites, or build a podcast, or even a short film or something like that. So I think that the program will be really relevant to those interested or working in, you know, media and broadcasting, curation in the cultural industry, so like museums, galleries, archives, not-for-profit organizations, or even, politics, and sort of extending out from there. So really the world is your oyster, I think, with all of these programs. We do have a question that had come in via email. That's great. So I'll turn to that now. And I think maybe this is for Luna and Lexi more likely. The question is, what is it like to go from an undergraduate in literature to a postgraduate study in these subjects? Maybe the two of you could talk through that journey a little bit. Let's go to Luna first.
Yeah, perfect. And this is a big commendation to the people running the comparative literature course, but I really did see it as a very natural next step. It became very clear that what I was building on my knowledge from my prior degree. It is still a big jump. There's a lot of work in a master's degree, especially when it's only a year long. But other than that, like it really just builds on the knowledge that you already have and the interests you already have, and I think that that's really a key point to the comparative literature courses. It kind of meets you where you are and builds on your knowledge of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Luna. Lexi, do you have any insights on this?
Yeah, my experience is a little bit different. I did my undergraduate degree in French. And so we did look at some French literature in my course, but I also did modules in film, in politics, and a bunch of other different things throughout my undergrad. And we also did translation at the undergrad level, but it was taught in a very different way, which I think was a big adjustment for me, because at the undergraduate level, it's more of a language learning exercise versus when you come into the MSc program, translation is very different. You're looking at it in more of a how is translation actually working in the real life kind of way, and like looking at it as more of a creative exercise, which is very different from the undergraduate level. And so I think it took some adjustment for me, but overall, as Luna said, like it was very smooth, and I can credit John and Magda as well, the course leaders, for making that transition quite easy. And also my ATLS, my individual translation teacher as well. Just, you know, it's a big jump, but I feel like it's very doable, because even if your undergraduate degree has differences in content, you're still learning, you know, same critical thinking skills, essay writing skills, and things like that, that are very easily transferable, and you just kind of have to adapt a little bit. But I think with the help of the lecturers, it's very easy. At least it was easy for me.
No, that's really great advice. And I think just as academia in general is maybe moving slightly away from this more sort of siloed disciplinary orientation into more kind of interdisciplinary work, I think all of these programs really give you know, candidates from a variety of different backgrounds opportunity to kind of like filter and focus based on their interests. You know, in terms of communications, right now there is no communications undergrad at Glasgow. And so we're really pulling in folks from media studies, journalism, English and literature, gender studies, languages, even maybe, you know, some of the social sciences to a certain extent. So it's really, I think, a great opportunity to take the sort of things you found really interesting in that undergrad and then expand them out in a slightly more independent way, a slightly more nuanced way for graduate studies. This might be another question for Lexi and Luna, but I think people really want to hear what you have to say. So I'll read the question out from the chat here. What is the workload like, especially full-time versus part-time? And I don't know if either of you have part-time experience, but I think the question here is, can you still study everything you want to while still doing a part-time degree, or even with sort of a full-time degree, is the workload manageable enough that you get to kind of hit all those interests, I guess? So I don't know if the two of you want to speak from your experience, and then maybe I'll get Shanti and Jonathan to chime in from, you know, a teaching perspective on workloads.
Yeah, I can only speak from a full-time student perspective, but I found the workload pretty manageable. My undergraduate fourth year was very full on, and so I think I was pretty well prepared for the amount of work that needed to be done this year. I will say there's more independent work, so you do need to have like a good sense of discipline, but I do think it helps that, you know, you're only doing this master's if you actually enjoy the subject and you're interested in it. And so I think that really helps it not seem so much like work or busy work. And I really did not struggle too much with managing the workload. Fortunately, I didn't have to work during my degree, which was, you know, I understand that some people do have part-time jobs, which can, you know, make it a little bit more difficult, but I do think it is pretty manageable. And, you know, extensions are there for a reason, and the lectures are also there to help you as well. So if you are struggling, like, there is help. But overall, I would say that the workload is generally manageable, especially if it's something that you enjoy.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, thanks, Lexi. What do you think, Luna? What's your experience with that?
I definitely agree to a certain extent. I do think that the workload is significantly larger than the undergraduate degree, for good reason, but significantly. Again, like Lexi said, with the independent work, I think that's where you both get a lot of workload, but also a lot of what you really want from it, which is you get to sort of research exactly what you want to research and your topics, but you do have to do it on your own time and with your own sort of discipline. And so it's definitely manageable. And like Lexi said, there's plenty of help, and the lecturers have been nothing but supportive the entire year for, I believe, everyone in my cohort. So if you ask for help, you'll definitely get it.
Mm-hmm.
But to sort of answer, I guess, the second part of the question is the master's is really there for you to study the topics you want to study. As much as there are set texts, they are not huge, and they will always ask for your opinion to on them, and also how you can sort of look at them through your own lens and interests.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Jonathan and Shanti, any tips on maybe managing workload, or sort of something that you've seen from your experience on maybe on the other side as the one assigning the work?
I think the first tip is actually schedule time in the diary to get it done, not on the day of the class. And I think, you know, as Luna and Lexi have said, to get the most out of your master's in whichever discipline it is, you need to be willing to put in the work. And that's why, of course, we all care very much that students do what they want to do in terms of research interests, and exploring ideas that really are meaningful to them, which always makes the work lighter. I think one of the greatest things you learn during a master's, which is very intense program, especially 1 year taught master's with a dissertation, there isn't much rest in there, is really learning to manage your own time. And I think, again, this is one of the most transferable skills that you learn on a master program. We have had part-time students over time, and I think it's worked quite well overall. You still get to do all the topics that you want to do. I find that sometimes part-time students tend to work a bit more because, of course, they have fewer courses, but do it for longer. And you can switch to part-time if you find that the workload is a bit too heavy as a full-time student. Although bear in mind, you cannot be part-time as an international student on our programs. John, I don't know if there is anything else you want to add about workload.
I mean, I think you said a lot of what I would have said. I mean, we try to make it manageable. So we the way things work on the translation studies program is we'll often assign like 1 or 2 articles as like compulsory reading, and then offer several more as like optional reading. So if you're really into a topic, you can like go and dig. But if you read the compulsory articles and you're like, this isn't for me, you know, it shouldn't take too much of your week. We do have a lot of students doing part-time jobs, like in and around Glasgow, kind of all sorts of things. And they seem relatively happy to be able to work a few days a week and manage the program either full-time or part-time. And again, we've also, like Shanti said, we've had lots of students do the program part-time over the years for all sorts of reasons. And they're very happy because they get to do the things that they want to do. Quite often we find that the part-time students end up auditing more classes than they would have been able to do if they'd just done it in 1 year, because they've got a little bit extra time so they can sit in on a class and kind of enjoy it without necessarily having to do the essays or examinations for it.
Mm-hmm. That's all really fantastic advice. And again, sort of as a newcomer, I will say that having worked in other institutions, comparatively, what I've seen so far around workload at Glasgow, it feels pretty humane. None of us want to see anybody fail. We want to see you succeed. And so I think my one piece of advice would just like, don't be a stranger. Talk to your professors, get to know them. And everybody is very, very willing to sort of help out with that, both, on the maybe more immediate course level, but also, the university has many supports in place for this. So just don't be a stranger would be sort of my my workload piece of advice.
Can I add to that, Lindsay,
Please, yeah.
that to testify to the fact that workload is manageable, a lot of our students do manage to pick up a lot of extracurricular activities as well. Currently, we have people doing internships at heritage institutions or the student newspaper, and we also have students joining on the various clubs and societies, which I think you have the link here on the screen. But what I really want to signpost here is the additional opportunities that our annual postgraduate conference offers. This is a conference in comparative literature and translation studies. We run it with our research center every year. And it is happening this week. Offer holders and prospective students have received the link to register and attend online or in person if you happen to be in Glasgow. And Luna is giving their very first paper at this conference. So I'm very pleased that this is very often one of the first opportunities to give a paper or present a poster. And Luna, I don't know if we can put you on the spot and ask how the experience of writing the paper has gone and how have you found it?
Well, it's not entirely finished yet, but it will be. But I think I'm just putting the last sort of little pieces together. But I don't know if this sounds insane, but it has been so fun. It's the first time that I'm doing like sort of an academic project without consequence, if you will. There's no grading, there's nothing I need to live up to. I just get to talk about things that I'm interested in, and I'm very excited to maybe make a few people a little bit uncomfortable.
That's a fun goal. And it's great to hear you talk so positively about that. Honestly, in my experience going to conferences, it's graduate students who give the best papers. Honestly, there's so much interest and passion and work that you all put into these things, and it's really admirable. And I've learned so much from being in these situations and hearing students speak about their work. Maybe I'll give Lexi an opportunity too to speak to any sort of like extracurricular stuff, whether it's conferences or club sports that you might have been involved in.
Honestly, I'm a little bit of a homebody. I have been mostly focused on just the work this year, but I mean, Glasgow in general is just such a lovely place to live. I mean, I was a member of the gym. The gym is great, if that's something that you're into. And, the whole campus is just lovely, like the green spaces at Kelvin Grove Park, the Kelvin Grove Gallery as well is just lovely. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to get started on my DIS, and hopefully, as John mentioned earlier, potentially that could lead to publication at some point, because I am creating essentially a translation sample. So obviously I don't want to get my hopes up, but that is something in the back of my mind that I think is a good goal to work towards if that's something that you're interested in when it comes to the dissertation stage. But yeah, at the moment, that's kind of my main focus. But the conference sounds very interesting, and I'm very impressed, Luna.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think what you'll find when you arrive at Glasgow is there's a good mix of sort of opportunities that are maybe university-wide or out in the community. And then there's opportunities that will be provided sort of in the space of a singular course, whether it's a field trip or a chance to put on a kind of exhibition of some kind, or share your work, or work together in a group towards a group project or something like that. So I think there's a good mix of all of these things, and many different ways for you to get involved, whether you're a home student or an international student. And there's a massive international student community at Glasgow. And I think maybe there's some links that have already been popped into the chat about how to sort of access those avenues as well. We are kind of drawing things to a close now. If there are any other questions, now is your chance to ask them. Don't delay. But as a way of just sort of maybe wrapping things up with the panel, I'll just ask generally, any last sort of words of wisdom. Is there anything that you really wish you would have asked before you began your program, or Shanti and Jonathan, is there anything you really wish students would know, before they start the program? And one or all of you can say something. I won't pick on anybody in particular, but sort of final thoughts, I guess.
I do have one final thought, or words of encouragement, I suppose. And I think it's something that I've really come into during my master's, is that what is so much. You know so much about something that people don't know anything about. And it is so interesting, and people want to know what you have to say. And I think that's really what a master's degree can help you sort of figure out, because sometimes you'll talk about things and you'll realize that you are the only one who knows what you're talking about. And it's great. It's wonderful. So if you want to, try.
That's really nice.
I love that, I must say. And one of my favorite things about our program is that I never stop learning new things. And for me, it really is a beautiful thing that we continue to learn from our students just as much as of course, we teach them. And that's because at master's level, seminars really are co-led. There is a co-creation of content that comes into everything. And as a student, you will come into your own, and you really will develop that independence that then will take you on. So I think that's really important. I would always recommend to have a good think about what it is that brings you here, and tell us and ask us for support, because there is a lot of tailored support and one-to-one support that will address specifically the things that you want to do and find out and be supported in doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if there's no more burning words of wisdom, it's really hard to kind of wrap a bow around this kind of thing, because in many respects, this is the beginning. But in terms of the panel discussion and the Q&A, it is sort of the end for now. But just on behalf of all of us here on the panel, we really can't wait to meet you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the session today. And if you do still have questions, you can reach out to Jonathan, Shanti, and myself, who are listed on the individual program pages. Check out all the links that have been posted in the chat for more information. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. I really hope that this has been helpful. And yeah, we really look forward to you joining us at the University of Glasgow soon. So thanks so much.